It's hard to see a career like Sheamus's and not be fascinated by it because he did everything and did it all in different ways, whether as a green wrestler or a loved veteran. For as much as Sheamus has been around the main event scene, he's one of the most decorated champions in WWE history. And it all sounds so strange because it feels like he's been a strong mid-card, upper mid-card talent for his entire career. When Sheamus burst onto the scene in 2009, everyone had questions, but the funny part is all of those questions were the same. Who is this guy? He came from out of nowhere and got a strong push. Sheamus was vicious, had a strong identity and connection to his home country of Ireland, and had an unbeaten streak. Sheamus wasn't expected to be some strong force in the main event scene, but this was a thought that aged as well as milk. WWE quickly threw him on Raw and had him demolish Jamie Noble. He had a strong personal agenda against him, and it was all for no reason. Sheamus would just destroy him, beat up the announcers, and within a month, he was challenging for the WWE Championship. This was insane, but also not out of the realm. What was out of the realm, though, was him challenging John Cena for the title on pay-per-view. It was so weird because if you look at November 2009, it has to be Randy Orton, Triple H, Shawn Michaels, and if it was going to be a new talent, Kofi Kingston. Sheamus was so out of the left field that you wouldn't have even considered him a challenger in this battle royal. Sheamus didn't get much of a reaction during this time, but they were insistent. Now, as a kid, even I thought Sheamus was just some random Irishman, but to other fans, they had a strong belief that Triple H was close buddies with them. And if you were on the internet in the early 2010s, this was thrown out a lot. There's a lot of people from day one I was etched in with a black mark about, who I am. So when I first started, Triple H was there and he took me under his wing and he was just like, listen, we went to a tour in Australia and I didn't know anybody because I was on SmackDown, but got switched to a tour of Raw of Australia in 2009. And he said, listen, you don't know anybody, so if you want to go to the gym and work out, you know what I mean? And I'll watch your matches and give you any feedback. And I was blown away. If you do that now, everybody in NXT does that now, right? And there was not one peep said about it, right? Then in a surprise turn of events, Sheamus won the WWE Championship, the most coveted prize in professional wrestling after 5.5 months of his debut. It was outrageous, and of course we gotta mention the botched ending, but regardless, Sheamus was gonna walk out as champion. It must have been a crazy feeling because judging by his contract, he was probably making low six figures while being WWE Champion at some point. That almost doesn't sit right with me. Sheamus' champion was odd, he clearly wasn't ready for it, and we didn't know too much about his personality. He was green in ring and needed more seasoning, but he actually held the title for 2 months, which was full of stupid finishes and forgettable matches. When he did drop the title, he ended up feuding with Triple H. This feud was the game's final full-time storyline, which also explains why everyone claims Sheamus' push comes from Triple H. He was starting to get better in ring and actually show more of his character. One of the things that helped Sheamus a lot is that all the younger guys barring Kofi Kingston were on SmackDown, and that WWE was so interested in making new talent because I doubt we'd even get a title challenging Sheamus if this was a couple of years earlier. WWE loved his forgettable title reign so much that they ended up having him dominate the summer as the champion again. One of the oddest two-time champions if you look at it from that time period's perspective. But WWE had a roster issue at the time. For as much as you could talk bad about Sheamus, he was a much more credible heel than he was a couple of months earlier after dealing with the likes of Cena, Triple H, and Randy Orton. And we do have to talk good about him for a moment. He really knew how to play that bully role well. He was a bit overpushed, but the man benefited from that time period a lot and actually turned into a strong character for the Raw brand. I doubt he was going to be afforded opportunities to even become the king of the ring as he ended up being at the end of the year if it wasn't for that. WWE did settle down on a strong push, but Sheamus was an upper mid-card guy, and honestly, there was nothing wrong with that, especially if he was going to be a strong challenger to guys like Randy Orton or somebody like John Morrison. But WWE was still high on him because he was always doing something, whether it's winning the United States Championship or teasing a world title charge. And then they had the idea to turn him face. This face turn was actually very good because he saw Mark Henry claiming to be the tough guy in the yard and Sheamus wanting to test that. He already beat up enough of the faces as is, but now he was going to destroy the heels on a consistent basis. Sheamus was being heated up and it was all before your eyes because there was one point after SummerSlam 2011 to the later part of 2013 where Sheamus went without a pinfall loss. I don't think there was 2 moments where Sheamus looked weak in the months leading up to WrestleMania. It was crazy. WWE considered Sheamus as somebody who could stand side by side with John Cena. He won the Royal Rumble, had a huge push, and there was some good, I'd say. Now in ring, Sheamus was at his best here, at least up to this point. One thing I hate about him is that he was constantly smiling and telling some Irish stories. The stories used to be long-winded at times, and one thing that really worked with Sheamus in 2012 was those physical matches. If he was in there with Daniel Bryan, The Big Show, or Wade Barrett, you'd have a great match. Even matches with Dolph Ziggler, where Ziggler sold like his life depended on it, were good. But Sheamus' presentation was a been there, done that thing. WWE even almost made him the cover star for WWE 13 as well. That helps you understand how much they valued him. It was all over the place in 2012, and if we look at the year as a whole, it was CM Punk, John Cena, Big Show, and Sheamus. These 4 were all around and for the most part would feature on both Raw and SmackDown every week at some points. Sheamus didn't stick as WWE's top guy after 2012, as it felt like there was always somebody better than him. not to mention that he wasn't the best character. That's always the issue with WWE when it comes down to it. They have to have you smile and be marketable, and I think to understand how Sheamus' face run went, let me just put it this way. If he ended up having a singles match against John Cena in 2012 or 2013, I don't think it would have been that big of a deal. And to me, that's the ultimate test to understand if someone is as successful as WWE makes them out to be. Sheamus fell down the card a bit and became a strong mid-carder. He was still protected, but not to the level that he was in 2012. 2012 was insanity and an anomaly in his career, because from here on, he would never have a year close to 2012, and usually somebody has a year like that in their prime. Yet this wasn't Sheamus' athletic prime or his in-ring prime. The fans ended up growing bored from him, and after another US title reign that nobody remembers, he disappeared. And if you thought the first half of his career was strange, there's still the second one, and to me it's stronger than the first because they knew what Sheamus was capable of at this point. He returns to the Mohawk, turns heel, and becomes a douche again, and as a character he just plays this role so well because it almost feels natural that Sheamus is a big bad bully. He picks the correct fights, acts like he's #1 in victory, but at the same time a lot of people didn't care too much for him, especially when he won Money in the Bank. This came as a huge surprise because Sheamus wasn't really a favorite for the briefcase. He was involved in a mid-feud with Randy Orton, doing stuff, but it wasn't of substance, and from out of nowhere he cashed in to become a 3-time WWE champion. Sheamus as a 3-time WWE champion is odd because you look at the talent that did win the title multiple times and he stands out the most. This was the worst title reign in his career and one that served as a transitional one. The League of Nations is amongst the worst factions of the 2010s, and it's unfortunate because on paper he should have been great. Alberto Del Rio had just won the title off John Cena, Wade Bear had experience in factions, Rusev was a credible threat at the time, and Sheamus was the WWE champion. This faction basically killed any potential push for Sheamus, but at the same time was designed to put over Roman Reigns. And it's sad to say this, but 2015 Roman Reigns next to the League of Nations looked like 2001 Rock. It almost worked for WWE to get Roman cheered again, but then things went awry. Sheamus' push dwindled back to where it was months earlier, and all he got was a 515 shirt. But at the end of the day, he's in the history books. It was a tough stretch for Sheamus up until the brand split, and even the brand split in itself felt like a time of reflection for the Celtic Warrior. But it's basically like walking in a forest and suddenly ending up in a mega city, because his storyline with Cesaro brought him stories for the next 3 years. They had these physical matches that reminded the fans of what Sheamus was capable of, and at times, these were the best matches on Raw, which is saying something. They traded wins, became frenemies, and after fighting so hard to pass the bar, they became the bar. It was a wonderful idea, and Sheamus for the first time became a tag team guy. These guys were side by side for about 3 years. They had great matches, Sheamus was in his wrestling prime, and Cesaro fit the role. WWE didn't have much for them, and you wouldn't know these two weren't tag team partners if you didn't have knowledge. They ended the New Day's long title reign, won multiple Raw and SmackDown tag team championships throughout the years, and it was a situation that benefited both of them. Sheamus unfortunately ended up having a career-threatening injury, and it seemed like the end. He suffered a concussion, had neck issues, and disappeared after WrestleMania. And there wasn't much news about him in 2019 after WrestleMania, but upon his return, Sheamus was back to how he was in the past. And it did start a bit slow, but once he went to Raw, the man was flying high. He was having some of the best matches in his career, and one thing I really like about this version of Sheamus is how dangerous and badass he felt. He felt like a guy that would show no remorse and kick your ass. I don't know how to describe it, but this version of Sheamus, I'd say from an intensity standpoint, was his best. You know, from 21 up until now. He already looked good with that look anyways, but here, he was on another level. It felt like Sheamus only cared about walking to the ring and beating up somebody. I think he was the most reliable wrestler on Raw at one point in 2021. Banger after banger, as he usually says. Drew McIntyre, Matt Riddle, Jeff Hardy, Damian Priest. He was revitalized, and the perception of Sheamus had changed, but it increased tenfold around this time. So far to the point where you'd never think some hated or were bored by this guy in the past. But the one thing that cemented this version of Sheamus was Triple H taking control of WWE. Now, right before this important change, Sheamus had a new faction by the name of the Brawling Brutes. And it was very silly at first, but it was such a simple team, so they weren't doing bad before the change. But with Triple H, he saw Sheamus doing well for himself with these matches and just increased the output. And Sheamus had what I would call a late breakout year. He showed up like crazy. The feud with Gunther was incredible and gave Sheamus his very best match in his career. It's a bit insane how his best work was so late in his career, but such is life. You'd expect these kind of matches from Sheamus in 2013. He garnered a positive reputation all around, and it's exciting when you hear the commentary team say it's fight night, because you understand that you're about to see a match that's vicious, intense, and something that almost takes a piece of somebody's career. Sheamus himself credits the pandemic era for being the time that helped shape this narrative and reception he's received from the fans. I definitely felt during the pandemic I really came into my own skin. I really felt like I had an opportunity to recreate myself. That's where the whole physicality came from. That's where it went into the banger era of Sheamus. Now, Sheamus really needed the right circumstances to shine. He wasn't a bad wrestler, it's just they pushed him into the spotlight so soon and almost felt offended that he didn't rise to the level they saw for him. And after I seen his performances in the last 3 years, there was a point where I didn't have a single problem with him winning a world title. It's funny how things change, but Sheamus really works well in this era of WWE despite his age. And the best part in all of this is that they still have one compelling story in their back pocket with the Intercontinental Championship. Such a decorated career left unfulfilled with the missing Intercontinental Championship, and we just might get it soon. Sheamus had 2 matches that are considered the best of their respective year, those being the Clash at the Castle match with Gunther and the Triple Threat match at WrestleMania 39. There's also a strong moment of inspiration for Sheamus, which has led to this run. When I got the concussion at Mania in New York, I thought my career was going to be over. I was actually at Edge's house and I saw the titles on the wall. I saw the Intercontinental title and I was like, I can't give up now. Sheamus' story is compelling. It's one where if you look at his career backwards, he had the perfect career. But it seems like for as much as WWE wanted to push him as this #1 guy, his career is still fulfilled, and I don't think it's one where it's like, oh, he could have been more, because I think Sheamus fulfilled his full potential. So yeah. Alright, what you guys think of Sheamus' career? Please comment down below. And that's for this video. Make sure you hit 10 beats of the bell right on the like button, or perhaps the bro kick on the subscribe button. Peace. I'm out.